Title: The Roots We Defend. The morning didn't start like most mornings on the farm. There were no birds chirping outside my window, no gentle rustle of leaves carried by the wind through the oak trees that lined the property. Instead, I jolted awake to a sound that hit me like a punch to the gut, a deep, guttural roar, followed by the sharp crack of splintering wood and the thunderous crash of something massive collapsing to the earth. My stomach twisted into a knot. I knew that sound. It wasn't just any structure falling. It was my barn. My family's barn. I didn't even bother changing out of the clothes I'd worn the night before. My boots were still on my feet, caked with yesterday's mud, as I bolted out of bed and tore through the house. My heart hammered against my ribcage, each beat a frantic plea to tell me I was wrong, that I'd imagined it. But when I threw open the front door and stumbled into the crisp March air, the sight before me confirmed my worst fear. The barn, my grandfather's barn, the one he'd built with his own hands over a century ago, was gone. In its place was a heap of broken beams and shattered memories, dust still rising from the wreckage like a ghost unwilling to let go. And there, standing at the edge of the chaos, was Evelyn Harper. Evelyn stood pristine in a cream-colored blazer and matching slacks, her blonde hair pulled back in a tight bun that screamed control. She held a caramel macchiato in one hand, sipping it casually, as if she were watching a gardener trim a hedge instead of a bulldozer obliterate a piece of my soul. The machine responsible for the carnage sat a few yards away, its engine still rumbling, its operator perched in the cab looking uneasy. She spotted me charging toward her, my breath visible in the cold morning air, and her lips curled into a smirk. She raised one perfectly manicured eyebrow, like she'd just caught me sneaking a cookie from the jar. "Good morning, Daniel," she called out, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "I was wondering when you'd crawl out of bed. This little eyesore was overdue for a cleanup, don't you think?" I couldn't speak. My fists clenched so tight my knuckles ached, and I stared at the wreckage, trying to process what I was seeing. That barn wasn't just wood and nails, it was history. My grandfather, Samuel Grayson, had poured his sweat and blood into it when he settled this land. It was where my father taught me how to mend a fence, where I'd spent countless summers stacking hay bales until my hands blistered. And now it was nothing. "What the hell did you do, Evelyn?" The words finally clawed their way out of my throat, low and rough, more growl than speech. She sighed dramatically, waving a hand toward the bulldozer as if it were a prop in her personal theater. "Oh, relax, dear. This is all part of the new Homeowners Association beautification project. We're clearing space for a community garden, maybe even a clubhouse. It's for the greater good. You'll thank me later." I stared at her, my vision blurring red at the edges. "I'm not even part of your damn HOA, Evelyn. This is my family's farm." She took another sip of her coffee, unfazed. "Well, that's a bit of a gray area, isn't it? Your property borders our neighborhood, which means it affects the community aesthetic. We had to take action." "Gray area?" I spat the words, incredulous. What kind of delusional nonsense is that? The bulldozer operator shifted in his seat, glancing between me and Evelyn like he wasn't sure who to fear more. I turned on him, my voice cutting through the air. "Get that thing off my land. Now." He hesitated, his hands hovering over the controls. Evelyn scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Don't be so dramatic, Daniel. If you had any sense of community spirit, you'd be grateful." Grateful? I felt like my head might explode from the effort of not lunging at her. Instead, I spun on my heel and stormed toward my truck, the gravel crunching under my boots. If Evelyn thought she could get away with this, she was about to learn who she was dealing with. I yanked open the door, slid into the driver's seat, and slammed it shut so hard the frame rattled. My hands shook as I fished my phone out of my pocket and dialed my cousin, Ethan. He picked up on the second ring. "Hey, Dan, what's up?" "Evelyn just bulldozed my barn," I said, my voice trembling with rage. There was a long pause, followed by a slow, disbelieving whistle. "She did what?" "She bulldozed my damn barn. Says it's for community improvement, even though I'm not in her stupid HOA." Ethan muttered something under his breath, something I was pretty sure wasn't polite, though it wouldn't hold up in court. "All right, don't do anything reckless. I'll look into the property laws. There's got to be something illegal about this." I hung up, my hands still trembling, and stared out the windshield at the wreckage. I needed to see it up close, to feel the weight of what she'd done. I climbed out of the truck and stepped over the splintered remains, my boots sinking into the soft earth. Kneeling down, I picked up a broken beam, my fingers tracing the faint initials carved into the wood. S.G. Samuel Grayson. My grandfather's mark. My chest tightened, and I stood, clutching the piece like it was all I had left of him. Evelyn was still there, chatting with a few HOA board members who'd shown up to gawk at her handiwork. She caught my eye and smirked again, but I wasn't about to let her think she'd won. "You know this land's been in my family for over 100 years, right?" I said, keeping my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "My grandfather founded this town, Evelyn." She didn't even blink. "That's lovely, dear, but history can't stand in the way of progress. You'll see, this is all for the best." I'd never wanted to throttle someone so badly in my life. Instead, I turned to one of the HOA members, an older guy named Harold who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "You're all okay with this?" Harold shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my gaze. "Evelyn said it was legal." "Evelyn says a lot of things," I shot back. He didn't respond, and I took a deep breath. Arguing with her directly was pointless. She thrived on being unbearable. I needed proof, something concrete to stop her. The town hall had records going back to my grandfather's time. If there was anything proving my family's ownership, it'd be there. But before I could move, Evelyn called out again, her voice smug. "Oh, by the way, we're holding a vote next week to extend the HOA's authority over this area. It's just a formality, of course, since we've already started the process." I froze. She wasn't just after my barn, she wanted everything. My jaw clenched so hard I thought my teeth might shatter. "You're not taking my land, Evelyn." She gave me a patronizing smile. "We'll see about that." I watched her walk away, her heels clicking against the pavement, and something inside me snapped. She thought she could waltz in here, destroy my family's legacy, and claim what wasn't hers. Not a chance. If Evelyn wanted a war, she'd just started one. I drove straight to town hall, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles blanched. The morning sun was climbing higher, casting long shadows over the quiet streets of Graysonville, a town my grandfather had named when he'd carved it out of the wilderness. If there was one thing I knew about Samuel Grayson, it was that he didn't leave things to chance. He'd built this place from nothing, and if Evelyn thought she could rewrite that history with a clipboard and a superiority complex, she was in for a reckoning. The town hall was a squat, brick building that smelled like old paper and stale coffee. The clerk at the front desk, a middle-aged woman named Marjorie, barely glanced up from her computer as I approached, her nails clacking against the keyboard. "I need access to land records," I said, leaning on the counter. "Anything showing the original deeds from when this town was founded." She sighed, gesturing toward the back. "Old property records are in the archive room. You'll have to dig through them yourself." That was fine by me. I pushed through the double doors into a dimly lit room lined with dusty filing cabinets. The air was thick with the scent of mildew, and the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. I rolled up my sleeves and got to work, pulling open drawers and flipping through yellowed folders. It took nearly an hour, my frustration mounting with every dead-end document, until I found it. The paper was brittle, the ink faded, but there it was, a deed signed by Samuel Grayson himself. I held my breath as I read it, my eyes scanning the words that made my heart pound. The document was airtight. The land, my farm, could never be sold, transferred, or repurposed without the explicit approval of a direct descendant. Samuel had donated chunks of his property to establish the town, but the farm itself had always stayed in the family. Evelyn and her HOA had no claim to it, no matter what they thought. I snapped a photo of the deed with my phone, then grabbed the entire file and marched to the mayor's office down the hall. Mayor Tom Reynolds was a wiry man with gray hair and a suit that hung off him like it belonged to someone else. He looked up from his desk with a weary expression as I barged in. "Daniel, what can I do for you?" he asked, his tone cautious. "You can tell me why the HOA thinks they can bulldoze my barn," I said, slamming the deed onto his desk. "Take a look at this." He rubbed his temples, already looking exhausted. "Evelyn came to us with a proposal, and you just let her do whatever she wants?" I cut in. "According to this, she had no right to touch my land. My grandfather put it in writing. This farm isn't just family property, it's protected. If anything, The HOA squatting on what he gave the town. Tom skimmed the document, his expression shifting from indifference to concern. He reached for his phone, but hesitated. Evelyn assured us she had the proper paperwork. She lied, I said bluntly. He let out a slow breath, nodding. All right, I'll look into it. That wasn't good enough. She's planning to expand the HOA's authority, I pressed. She's trying to vote my land into it. If you don't stop her, she'll take everything. Tom didn't look surprised, which told me he knew more than he was letting on. I can call an emergency meeting, he said finally. But if Evelyn's been playing dirty, you'll need more than a deed to take her down. I already had a plan brewing. Don't worry about that. Back at the farm, I spent the afternoon digging through every box and file my grandfather had left behind in the attic. If Evelyn wanted a fight, I'd bury her in proof. Hours passed, the sunlight fading through the dusty windows, until I found something that stopped me cold, a set of blueprints tucked into an old envelope. I unfolded them carefully, my pulse quickening as I took in the details. It wasn't just a community garden or a clubhouse. These were plans for a massive commercial mall, a sprawling complex of shops, parking lots, and office spaces that would swallow not just my farm but half the town. And at the bottom of the page, in bold letters, was the name of the development company, Harper Ventures. Evelyn's husband, Richard Harper, owned it. This wasn't about beautification or property values. It was a land grab, pure and simple. Evelyn had never planned to stop at my barn. She was after everything, and she'd been playing the long game to flip Graysonville for a profit. I sat back, my heart pounding. I had her now. That evening, I called in a favor with Millie, who ran the local diner, and set up a meeting. Word spread fast in a small town, and by the time I arrived, the place was packed. Dozens of people crammed into booths and standing along the walls, their faces a mix of curiosity and unease. Even some of Evelyn's HOA loyalists were there, though they kept to the edges, avoiding eye contact. I stood at the front, holding up the blueprints for everyone to see. This, I said, my voice carrying over the murmurs, is what Evelyn's been hiding from you. The room went quiet as people leaned in, squinting at the plans. I let the moment hang before continuing. She didn't bulldoze my barn because it was an eyesore. She did it to pave the way for this, a shopping center, a parking lot, all built on land she doesn't even own. Someone from the crowd, a farmer named Pete, shouted. She told us it was a community project. She lied, I said, meeting his gaze. She planned to take your homes, your businesses, and sell them out from under you. The anger in the room was electric. Even the HOA members who'd backed Evelyn looked shaken. And then the door swung open, and there she was, Evelyn Harper, striding in like she owned the place. Her eyes locked on the blueprints in my hands, and for a split second, she paled. But she recovered fast, crossing her arms and forcing a smile. Now, she said, her voice syrupy sweet. I don't know what kind of conspiracy theories Daniel's been feeding you, but I assure you. You assured us the farm was legally part of the HOA, Harold snapped, stepping forward. That was a lie, wasn't it? Her smile faltered. It was a misunderstanding. I cut her off, holding up the document with Harper Ventures' name on it. Is this a misunderstanding too? Because it looks a lot like you've been planning to sell us out for a long time. The silence was deafening. Evelyn scanned the crowd for support, but all she found were furious faces. Mayor Reynolds stood up, clearing his throat. I think it's time we had a real discussion about the future of this town. Evelyn tried to argue, but it was over. Her empire of lies was crumbling, and as she stormed out of the diner, her face flushed with humiliation, I allowed myself a small smile. She'd underestimated me, underestimated all of us. Evelyn didn't go down quietly. The next morning, I found a cease and desist order taped to my door, claiming I'd slandered her and damaged the HOA's reputation. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. Her good name was long gone, but the fact that she was still fighting meant she hadn't realized how deep she'd dug herself. I took the letter to Ethan, who skimmed it with a smirk. She's bluffing. There's no case here. She's just trying to scare you. She's welcome to try, I said. She's not scaring me off. Good, Ethan replied, leaning back in his chair. Because she's going to drag this out as long as she can. I was ready for that. First, I went back to the mayor's office with the deed and made it official, my land, and several other historic properties were placed under preservation status. The town council, humiliated by how easily Evelyn had manipulated them, passed it unanimously. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. Evelyn, meanwhile, was unraveling. Without the town's support, the HOA fell apart. Board members turned on her, forcing her to step down as president. She screamed, threatened, claimed she was the victim, but no one bought it anymore. Her biggest mistake was trying to cover her tracks. When the council audited the HOA's finances, they found missing funds, HOA fees that had vanished, maintenance charges that never went anywhere, a slush fund tied to her personal account. And then there was her house, built on a lot that technically belonged to my grandfather's estate. She'd fudged the paperwork to get it, and now it was being repossessed. The day they seized her house was poetic justice. I stood on the edge of my property, arms crossed, watching as she packed up her designer furniture while the neighbors whispered. She glared at me, venom in her eyes. "This isn't over," she hissed. "Oh, I think it is," I said, smiling. She left town a week later, her reputation in tatters. Some said she tried to start over elsewhere, but she was a punchline now. No one would trust her again. With Evelyn gone, I turned back to the farm. The barn couldn't be rebuilt overnight, but I wasn't just going to restore it. I'd make it better. Neighbors who'd once been too scared to cross Evelyn pitched in. We rebuilt the barn, fixed the fences, and turned part of the land into a real community space. Not some overpriced scam, but a place for everyone. The town changed too. The HOA was restructured, stripped of its corruption, and people started to feel like they had a voice again. As for me, I kept my promise to Samuel Grayson. The farm stayed in the family, a testament to our roots. On the day we finished the barn, I carved something new into a beam next to my grandfather's initials. Never let them take what's yours. Evelyn had learned that the hard way. And if anyone else ever tried, they'd learn it too.